and welcome to another episode of Artful TV. I am Aileen Imperatrice. I'm co-hosting with my friend Hal Raines. You see over in the box over there.
Hey,
Hal,
everybody.
thank you for being here again. And then, of course, today we get to speak with our wonderful guest artist, Shannon Grissom, and we'll hear more about
Hello.
her work and also see some of her images that you see behind her there a little later in the show. But first, we're going to talk to Hal and see what he's working on in some video of a new art pottery project he's working on. Go ahead, Hal.
Thank you. Well, this week I'm still going to cover slip trailing and work like that. I can't wait to show you next month's stuff already. I've got that shot. I just haven't got it edited. But what we're going to look at this week is just again working with different textures, different techniques that I've shown in the past, and taking it further. So it's like when I was teaching school, it's always another step, so we get to mastery in time. Okay, so let's take a look. Hey everybody, this is Hal Raines. I'm glad you're here to take a look at our show with us. And we're going to talk about quite a few things today actually. Underglazing, slip trailing, chattering, sgraffito and carving, and then for me, really importantly, a wall hanging foot. So with that, we're on our way to underglazing, which is the first part of our list. You've seen me work with underglaze before. You know that a lot of it is layering to get the right colors, the right textures. And with our first piece, the wide mouth face, you can see that's exactly what I'm working on. The theme for this show, for me anyway, is St. Patrick's Day. So lots of greens, golds, browns. When you underglaze, you know it's really about layering. And even though you think you're finished, sometimes you're not. So I'm going to go right into slip trailing. I use a ZM applicator and they're purchasable almost any place they sell art supplies. So at this point I'm just putting some white dots in there, and those are underglaze. So you can see what that guy looks like with just that. And I'm going to go around the rim. Maybe remember I told you I was going to use some golds. Well, this is a dark umber gold, and I'm going to use it inside and basically just remind you of what I'm using, and it's the ZM applicator. So you can see this is me just basically bringing the color in, blending them together to make it more uniform. Okay. The second piece we're going with today is just simply a shallow bowl, and I just am dumping the underglaze on it and using a brush to smooth it out for coverage. Yeah, once I've got the coverage right, then I just go back to the slip trailing. And at this point, I'm going to use the same brush that I did earlier because I want some different color techniques and the effects overall. I'm going to use a small red rib just for chattering. I love the looks of chattering, and you can do it a lot of different ways. There are chattering tools. You can use a bent over, a hacksaw, so many different ways to do it, but this is one of my favorite, just bouncing a rib. See, it looks pretty great, right? So I'm using a brush at this point just to thin out that area of underglaze that I used. And I want to put a couple different lines on there so it'll help me be more uniform, putting my slip trails on there. Sgraffito and carving are pretty similar. Actually, with sgraffito, you're carving through a surface that's, you know, glazed over or underglazed or has had slip applied. You know, there are a lot of different ways to, color the surface of your work. Maybe you've been carving through wax, a wax resist, or some other medium that's going to help you temper and give you an interesting result. Now carving, you're just actually chunking into the regular clay that's just there and bare naked. So that's the difference really. One is you're just carving through a medium to get to the clay, and then with carving, you're actually carving right into the raw clay itself. So this is a diamond tool. I find it to be really helpful. The little beak that's on it is sharp. Ooh, it's really sharp. So if you like clean lines, you're gonna love this tool. It's on the pricey side, but once in a while they have specials. You just need to go online and look for them. If you sign up for their newsletter, you'll get a discount from time to time. So I'm just going to fill in with some spots. I like the layering all together. So I'm using the white underglaze with the Zim application tool again. Kimper tools are among my favorites, but you can use a lot of different things. They don't necessarily even have to be pottery tools. Our final segment today is trimming a foot. Trimming a foot on a piece that's going to hang on the wall. And start trimming the profile on the outside to match the inside. It's always important to compress the base of the pot so you don't get cracks. If you're going to hang a piece on the wall, it's even more important. Remember earlier I told you that a lot of times you can use tools that aren't necessarily designed for pottery? So you just saw me use a cherry pitter. And cherry pitters, although you'd think it's a little unconventional to use for pottery, it has a nice way of getting under the very edge and actually giving you a lip that you can, stick onto the wall and anchor the piece, because it does catch the head of the screw or the nail that you're using. And when I press it over like that, using the rib and the fingers to compress the edge a little more, it gives you something to hold on to and it makes it substantial. So I'm using a Zim tool again. And underglaze, especially purple and lavender underglaze, I love them. So do I need to do it? No. Do I like to do it? Yes. Do people comment on it? Yes. So the more you can do to make your own work speak your voice and what you enjoy, the more sellable your pieces are. I'll show you the piece when I get finished doing the underglaze and the dots and any carving, because I do all of that on the outside of the piece because I did it on the inside. You can see that the techniques are just the same. I just use them in different ways. By now you know what I'm looking for, you know what I'm looking at, and I will tell you, there's no secret to this. It's just practice and having fun and deciding what you want the piece to look like. A lot of artists starts with sketchbooks. For me, personally, it's hard to use a sketchbook because I find myself being bound too much, and I prefer the spontaneity. If you're interested in more information, you can always reach me at halraines@sbcglobal.net. You can follow me at halrainespottery.com or friend me on Facebook. Thanks for visiting. Such a deal, right? So that's pretty much it. And the piece is already spoken for. It's a birthday present for March. And this particular piece that's coming up for next month I'm really excited to show you that one. So that being said, let's take a look at Aileen.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you a question first, really quick. Got about a minute.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to know about
Sure.
the colors that you choose. You were talking about at the end about the purple and how you really love that underglaze, but don't all colors change in the kiln once they're fired? So does that change, or are there some colors that do stay the same?
Well, well, that's a really great question. Things pretty much stay consistent if you're using an electric kiln. But if you're going
Yeah.
to alter the atmosphere, like say in a gas or a wood fire, a lot of times the colors will change, but it has to do with how much oxygen is left in the tank or left in the kiln when you're firing. If you pull, like if you're going to use let's just say a gas kiln, because you're altering the atmosphere of it, you're going to choke the oxygen down, right? So all the iron that's in the clay or is uh, in the underglaze gets pulled to the surface. So all the iron comes out. So it frequently darkens your piece quite a bit. But that's
Okay.
gas or other things. So good question.
All right.
Good
Well, now we'll
question.
go on to my pieces. Thank you for introducing me. I just wanted to throw that question into you. So the work that I'm sharing today, decided to pull 5 pieces from a series I did that was called Self Portraits. And each of these pieces are relating to a time where I was really starting to first focus on doing more personal work, that my artwork was turning into more personal expressions of things I wanted to say. So we'll look at the first piece here. And this one's called What Must You Think of Me? So this was a piece that was one of the first ones I did in the series. And it was because I was a little hesitant about how people would receive some of this work once I knew what I was going to be doing. and how much I was going to be exposing of myself through each of the pieces, I was a little concerned that people would feel differently about me in a way that maybe would change their feelings towards me as a friend or something. You know, I wasn't sure, but mainly the whole series came about because early on in my career, I started doing some pieces where I had little chairs in the background or chairs in different parts of the paintings, and people would ask me, why do you have chairs in the paintings? And I finally realized it was every time I would make a painting that revealed something very personal that I'd gone through, I would put a chair in it. So it was basically me. I was putting myself in the painting. And that's why the idea of the self-portraits came about. So all of these pieces, the chairs are the focal subject. And I decided to really embrace that. So now the next piece you'll see here, this is called In My Fog. And specifically, it's relating to that sense of mind that I go into when I'm working, where I just completely cut myself off from everything else in the world, all distractions. I'll have music that I use to keep me in moods for different types of pieces. But other than that, I don't go out. I don't engage with people much. And if I do, they notice a complete difference in my mood because I'm still with my head in my studio and working on my work. So I'm completely in the fog of where I need to be for working on and creating new work. And I allow myself, of course, to be totally immersed in that because I know that's the only way to be completely cathartic in my experience in creating those pieces. And it's really important for me, and why it's so secretive, I guess, and a very sacred place to be in my studio, that I connect with that deeper part of the emotions that I have for experiences I want to put into the visual form. And to do that, I really have to become another level of vulnerable that I don't really share a lot with people. And so it puts me in a whole different mindset. And that's what this particular piece is really about. And you see the long, tall chairs with some with ladder steps on it, and just kind of reaching into that fog that I take myself into. If you want to ask something, go ahead. That's fine.
I love that that the chairs are so tall and that they're ladderish. Can you speak about that? And because your other chairs are a different scale, so what's the significance in this one?
Right. Well, again, because it's replicating the idea of how I'm going into a different frame of mind and completely losing myself in that, I'm separating from the boundaries and the terra firma, as it were, Earth, and going into that space in order to create work and to reach into a deeper part of myself. And so it's separating myself in a way that puts me at a far distance from everything else that grounds me. And it's allowing me to get into that headspace that gives me the ability to create these things that are very, very emotionally connected in a way that I might not be able to express in regular daily living. And so it's just really reaching into that far end of me and allowing myself to go deep into the fog of what I need to do to create the work. And so that's why they're so tall, because they're just separating myself from the grounding that I would normally have in daily life.
Wow.
And I think it's something we all as artists have to do in order to reach into what we want to create. So yeah, that's what that's from. This is called Vulnerable, and it is a painting that is within a box. And I created, well, actually my husband created the box for me. I had this vision of having this piece set back into the box, and then it's about 3 inches depth, and at the very under the frame of the box itself is stretched pieces of different colored yarn that goes across the front of the piece. And the whole idea behind this Vulnerable is, again, knowing that a lot of this work that I was going to share in this series was going to be exposing a lot more about my life than I've ever done before. I felt extremely vulnerable, but I knew I wanted to do it. And so the piece resembles me. You've got the outer layer of the brown, which is resembling my brown skin, and then the inner layer of the pink, which is all of us as human beings. We're all pink inside, and we're all the same inside. And it is, going along with that idea that I think we can all relate to each other in ways of things that we've gone through together or apart, and we can share those experiences. And that was one of the things that happened with the series. When I shared it publicly, people really responded to it in a way and shared with me their own stories that they probably wouldn't share normally, because they felt they could relate to what I was saying and that I was being so open with what I was going through. So that's where this piece comes from and is about. And then the next piece we've got is called Visiting Hours Do Not Apply. And this specifically relates to an event I went through with my husband. He was in the hospital for 10 days. He almost died. And it was because of his polycystic kidney disease, which is what led us to having to do a kidney transplant 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, 3.5 years ago, anyway. But he had a rupture of his kidney. The cyst ruptured and he was bleeding internally for several days. And so we took him to the hospital after he had some excruciating pain. And what they found was, of course, that it had blood all over inside of his organs, and he was slowly dying. And so they had to drain him of all the fluids and then just pump him full of antibiotics to try to stave off what was going on. And all the organs that you see in the little boxes around the bed and the chair are all the organs that were affected by the rupture on his kidney. And the chair itself is me again, and you notice there's no back or seat to it, and the legs are actually separated from the bottom portion because there was a part of me that had to stay grounded in knowing what was going on. And since I am his spouse, I had to make all of the power of attorney choices and decisions that had to be made in the hospital. Meanwhile, emotionally, I was just couldn't believe this was going on and was really having a hard time with the fact that he was dying. And so here I was at 34 at the time, and they told me that I was probably going to be a widow. And so it was facing that reality and trying to deal with the reality of making those decisions that I had to make with the doctors, but then also still just feeling like it was all surreal. And of course, the bed representing him, and you have blood on the legs of the bed for what was going on at the time, and the whole background, the green surreal background, for just feeling in another world and just not really understanding how to deal with the situation at such a young age. They thankfully did save him. He's still alive today. And, we went through a lot at that time. But certainly it was something that took me a few years to figure out how I would express it in a painting. And this is what came from that. And then the final piece is called Things Are Not Well in This House. And this is a piece that's kind of comical, but also very real, because no matter what time of life we're in, and no matter what generation we come up in, there's always things that are not going well, but we try to do the best we can. It certainly means that, there are times where things can feel completely upside down in our world, and we're just kind of clinging, trying to hope for some kind of chance to get through it. It's definitely a piece that has served me well for expressing a lot of angst, like a lot of people have, especially even now. We're all going through the pandemic and everything else that's going along with it. And it's just, we're all feeling unnerved and very anxious. And so it's a chance to express that further. And now I think we've run out of time on my segment, so I don't want to take too much time away from the next thing. So let's move on to Shannon. I'm really looking forward to seeing your work. Of course, I've seen some of your pieces before, and I appreciate everything you do. So let's take a look at your things.
Thank you. This was, I do a self-portrait, every few years. It's a great way to check in with yourself. And this one, I wasn't too sure that I was going to do something with the mask, but then my stepson got COVID. He's been in and out of the hospital since November, very, very ill, touch and go for a lot of times. And I got a little frustrated with people saying that you don't need to wear a mask and that kind of thing. So I decided that I was going to do the self-portrait with the mask as a statement, because I just feel like it's not just about me, it's about protecting other people. And the intensity of the eyes, it's interesting. In doing a self-portrait, I usually, you see my whole face, you see my whole attitude, but I feel like you really get the spirit coming out of this one. So this was my, as much as a political statement as I'll ever do about wearing masks. And it's called Shields Up. And I think that through COVID, there are a lot of shields that have been up that I have done just to protect myself through a very difficult time. He's actually out of the hospital now, so I'm really, really happy
Good.
about that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's powerful.
I I used to do my portraits very, very controlled. And this one is when I first started doing them with the palette knife. And I would go to the live model sessions up at UC Western Artists and paint from a live model. And that's how she came into being. She was just great fun. And this was my, um, I think, I did used to paint completely tight, completely controlled. And what I realized over time is it's just not me. So she's one of the first times that I actually let myself out so people could see.
Wow.
And this is one of my earlier portraits. This was a commission from Blossom Hill Winery. This is winemaker Carol Thorup. They commissioned me to paint her after she passed. And I love this painting. I feel that her spirit is still there and she's just radiating off the canvas. So this was a really cool experience to work with her on this. Even though she had passed, I really felt like I tuned in and got her spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah, what a great evolution of changes.
Okay, we are heading into the home stretch here. We're going to take a look at the canvas, see what we need to do, and get her done. All right, so I'm looking at the rhythm to see, okay, is this working? Is this not working? Are these shapes here? I think this one could go way higher. There. Okay, and now it's time to just ground it and see what needs to be done. So I'll add a little bit of blue, and I'm going to ground it with this phthalo blue. In the reference photo, it was grounded more with the greens. All right, there's that. A little more blue here. I think some phthalo yellow green, just some good blobs of this stuff would be awesome in a few places. So let's do that right next to the red. And I just made mud, and that happens. So I can scrape some of this off. And put some other paint down. All right, I think a little tiny bit of blue, and we will leave this one alone. I know I keep saying that. There. Now, that section is good. I think the only thing that needs to be grounded is this lower section here. So let's take some of this blue and echo that. Just grabbing the flat part of the knife. Make a few little grass blades. Tie that in together with a little dab here. Break that up. Done. That's it. You will find you will have muses that scream in your ear that say stop. And so that's what I'm doing. Congratulations, you did it. Please post your paintings. I can't wait to see what you created.
This is from one of the modules from my Painterly. I have an online school called Painterly, and it's a palette knife painting in a day class. So that you just got a little taste of that. It was really great fun.
That's cool.
So
It
I
is.
spent the month of January working on, I have done a series of sock monkeys, and I created a oracle card deck with the sock monkey paintings. And this is one of them. It's a triptych. I have speak no bad stuff, hear no bad stuff. It's just a lot of fun. I really had fun setting up the still lifes for these, and it was funny. The grandkids would come in and see me setting all this stuff up, and they wanted to play. I'm like, no, you can't touch this right now. Grammy's working. And of course, there had to be a guitar there somewhere.
Well, now these sock monkey cards, you were telling us before that they're now becoming marketed. You're going to actually have a whole deck that you're going to be selling.
I've approached a publisher, and I did a lot of research, approached one, and so I don't know what'll come of that, but I do know that you know, the whole thing with the sock monkeys is like basketball, and I really, when you flip your wrist, you know it's going in, and that's how I feel about these oracle cards. Somebody will publish them, so I'm not sure who yet, but you know, it'll get done.
Well, I just love the
Oh,
images, and hopefully, I mean, are you selling the actual, like a painting or image that you would sell separately from the cards, or are you just reserving them for only cards?
Eventually I will. I want to get the cards published first, and then I don't want them out until the whole thing is unveiled and we have a, you know, book signing and a release and that kind of thing. I don't want to get ahead of what would happen with that. I do have all of the sock monkey paintings are available as prints, cards on a number of products. They've been golf club head covers. They are golf ball markers. I had a book release party at a country club in Hollister, and that started the whole chain of events for the golf industry and my sock monkey. So it's been a fun ride.
Wow.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. Hal, you
You're
want to close us out?
No, I just, I really need to take your painterly class. I'm so dying to do that.
Great.
So
well,
I will reach out to you. Oh, it looks fun. It really does. So Shannon, thank you for being our guest. Aileen, always wonderful. And we need more time after COVID so we can talk and ask 900 questions about your chairs. So everybody, thank you for being with us today. And on behalf of Artful TV, lots of love. Take care.